Welcome to Everyday CX-ism, the podcast where real human experience connects to the business decision behind them. I'm Katie Stabler, founder and director of the global and award-winning customer experience agency Cultivate. Each week, we take a real human experience, unpick what might be happening behind the scenes, and ask what can we all do differently. Now, if you listened in last week, wow, it was quite a controversial episode, it seems. I shared a story about a hotel experience in which there was an additional charge for a last-minute addition guest to the room. And look, the experience was quite a negative experience, but it wasn't necessarily about the charge. It was the experience that surrounded it. And yeah, it turns out it's really divided opinion. There's lots of comments online regarding this. So if you haven't listened, I definitely recommend you go and listen to last week's episode. But we're going to turn things around a little bit this week, because the first two episodes of Everyday CX-ism have focused on negative customer experiences, where today we're actually going to focus on a pretty good customer experience, which actually started as a negative, now I come to think of it, but it is a good customer experience in the end, spoiler alert. And it's with Tesco's. So, without further ado, as usual, let me share the experience. So, this experience, let me just check the date. This experience was from 2018. Keep that in mind because that is super important. 2018, what? We're talking 8 years ago. Do the math? Yeah, that's right. 8 years ago. What happened is I am an online shopper of Tesco. Now, like many online delivery grocery places, if they don't have your item in stock, you can opt to have substitutions or not. And I do always have the substitutions because, generally speaking, especially as the years have gone past, the substitutions are pretty good. They work. Normally, you actually even end up a little bit better than the original item you chose. So, great. But I went through a bit of a spell with Tesco's where week on week, substitutions were failing. Either things weren't being substituted or the substitutions were questionable. And eventually there was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I, Mrs. Customer, complained, which I rarely do. You know, like many of us, if something negative happens, we kind of just suck it up and get on with it. In fact, I think the statistic might not be still accurate today, but it's something like 1 in 26 customers complain. The others just walk away silently. So complaint could be seen as a gift, really. But I'm going to be brave and I'm going to read you the complaint. So bear in mind, number of failed substitutions. Here's my complaint. Hi, my shopping was delivered earlier whilst I was not home. My partner took it in, and I'm finding it hard to believe how ridiculously bad the customer experience was. I ordered chorizo, which was substituted for a red pepper and chorizo tortilla. How on earth can that be considered a serious substitution? Question mark, question mark, question mark. I refuse to believe there was no other actual chorizo available in store. Maybe it wasn't. But still, that's a weird substitution, right? Anyway, do they expect me to pick out the bits of chorizo? I also ordered squid from the fish counter. This was not delivered due to no appropriate substitution. Again, ridiculous. You have a number of fresh and frozen squid options available. I do not believe this couldn't have been substituted at all. Please also look back to my last week's order, whereby I purchased 6 bottles of wine, for the 25% off discount. You couldn't substitute a bottle of Chardonnay, and so I lost the offer and paid full price for the remaining 5. You couldn't substitute Chardonnay? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. That's odd because you have on this week's order. I wasn't going to complain last week, but this is getting ridiculous. Okay, I think you can hear the frustration in my voice. And actually, we can tell how long ago this was because I don't drink Chardonnay anymore. I'm more of a Pinot girl. But that's beside the point. Now, negative customer experience, right? Week on week, I'm ordering. Week on week, my deliveries are not coming as expected. And in my opinion, the substitutions are in particular failing because they're just not being substituted. Where as a customer who does go in store, I know that there's loads of different options of these items available. So to me, it doesn't make sense. And finally, I'm so incensed that I get on the angry keyboard warrior face and send them a complaint email. However, here is where the customer experience gets rather great. Again, I'm going to read the email because I need to give this the full justice it deserves. Hi, Katie. I think you have hit the jackpot today. You have me dealing with your complaint, and I am a legend. Now, there might not have been any chorizo. It does happen, but to substitute it for a potato pancake? Question mark, question mark, question. See how he's mirroring my response? The squid, okay, that I can explain. Although in store, we do have other options. When the picker is asked to pick an item from the fish counter, if there is none there, you don't get it. They are not able to go to the freezer section and look through the items as their work is mapped, and if they leave the map area, it can cause quite a stir. This isn't great for customers, I get that, but you wouldn't believe the complaints we get when we substitute fresh items for frozen. The why? If I could send you a facepalm meme, I would. And if you don't know what that means, go and Google it, please. Okay, how to make this right. I've called the store and discussed this with them. Although they have handheld devices that give them substitution ideas, they have to realize that just because an item has chorizo in it, it does not make it a suitable substitution for an order of chorizo. I can't do anything about the squid, I'm afraid, but now I want calamari, so thanks for that. I will refund you £17.50 from today's order, as this is what you should have saved if we had sent you 6 bottles of wine last week. And I'll also add another £20 on top of that, actively giving you a free bottle of vodka for this week. You must need it after all of the hassle we've put you through. I promise I drink sensibly. Finally, let me see if I can get a smile from you. Check this out. Right, I'm going to be super brave now and try and show you my rap skills, because this is genuinely what he wrote. Okay. Now, this is a story all about how a customer of mine was turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute, so just sit right there, and I'll tell you a story of how I became the Prince of Bel-Air. I called up the store around 7 or 8, and I yelled at the man, "Tortilla, for God's sake! Look at the order and the state of my hair. Now sort out your pickers or I'll come down there." I hope you got the tune and had a little smile at what I've said there. It's not great service at all, and I'm sorry for this, but hopefully this goes some way to putting things right. We actively use feedback from our customers to continually improve the service we provide. Did you hear the theme tune of that song he wrote me there? For anybody who's, what was the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? 90s, 80s, 90s? I'm an 80s child, but if you're around that era, you should know who the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is, and you should have recognized the theme tune in his little ditty. I mean, genius, right? There are so many positive things about this customer experience, hence why I'm smiling like this, and hence why 8 years later, I still remember and tell this story. And the reason I'm even talking about this, the reason I remember this story again, is because at the 17th Annual Customer Contact Conference Centre that I was hosting a few weeks ago in Berlin, I actually met Thiago Cavallet, who is a UX designer at Tesco's, and we got talking about this experience. So let's just take a breath. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Let's just talk about that particular email. Potentially risky, okay, but humorous, very humorous indeed. Whilst it was humorous, he also addressed every single point of my complaint. And he did that line by line, which showed me that he'd listened, he heard, he got my frustrations, and he addressed every single line item. He included this amazing personal creative touch. The mention of face palm, the joke about the squid and him wanting calamari, of course, the link to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme tune. Genius, super creative. Obviously, I don't know what's gone on in the background there, but I hope that he looked at my demographic, he looked at my style of writing, and he thought, yes, this is going to resonate. And he completely exceeded my expectations. So I wrote a complaint email, definitely expecting a response and a resolution, but not expecting that type of response and resolution. Genius. So once again, I must tell you, I do not work with or for Tesco's, and therefore these are my musings of what I think is going on behind the scenes here. But first and foremost, what I would say is that in my experience, the staff are empowered to read the email and take their time to respond. You don't get a response like this from somebody who is whizzing and rushing through a huge caseload. Yes, maybe he's busy, and yes, maybe he is just a super adept complaint handler, but it screams like he's paid attention, he's listened, he's addressed every point, and he's took his time to respond more creatively. We talk about employee empowerment an awful lot as well, and people being able to flex and use their personality to do the right thing for the customer. And this just screams of employee empowerment, right? You know, yes, this could be risky. This could have absolutely landed differently with a different customer of a different demographic who might have just thought they were taking the absolute Michael. But it feels like this person was so comfortable and confident in his ability, and he was empowered, because I assume that's some kind of quality assurance and supervision process. He was empowered to be able to respond in such a creative and unique way. We also talk about empathy so much in customer experience, and this guy just oozes empathy. You know, it feels like he absolutely heard and saw my frustrations, maybe with the amount of exclamation and question marks put in my email. No, cap locks, I'm proud to mention. But yeah, a lot of exclamation marks and claims of frustration. And he showed that he got that. You know, again, the way in which he commented on my points tell me that he understands why I'm frustrated. He gets it. So again, I don't just feel like he's handling a complaint or a number or even just a person. He's handling me personally, uniquely as an individual. And he's making sure that he really is demonstrating and showing to me that he does understand, that he does get it. In situations like this, especially when it comes to complaints, it is so easy to default to policy and just adhere to policy. But in this circumstance, you can see that maybe he still was working alongside policy. You know, the refunds that he gave me, I'm sure, were within the remits and the parameters of what he was allowed to do. But it feels like person overtook policy here. And again, that human experience was just, well, is very, very memorable. And again, whilst I can only muse on what's happening in the background, I hope that Tesco's approach to the training of complaint management and handling has been what has created this just beautiful, clever, funny, and perfectly executed complaint response. And wow, I mean, this is something we can all learn from. Like, complaints are difficult at the best of times, but if you can turn a negative experience into such a positive, happy, smiley customer, positive experience, then wow, then that's amazing. And you know what, actually, another thing that I think is really important here is that he took ownership and he demonstrated ownership. So he explained to me the reason why some of the failures had happened. But he also said in his email that he'd contacted the store to discuss this with them, which is fantastic because we all know that silos happen. Different departments work in isolations, different stores potentially work differently. But this guy told me that he took it upon himself, he took the ownership to contact the store to have a chat with them about it, which again shows to me, Mrs. Customer, that I've been listened to, cared enough about for action to have happened. Hopefully this will be prevented in the future, and maybe my feedback has even influenced the way in which they do things. So there's maybe what is going on in the background. I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts. And if you were in my shoes, I'd be really interested as to whether that complaint response would resonate with you or would infuriate you. But what was actually at play here? What's the customer experience psychology? Are you familiar with the customer experience recovery paradox? If not, you need to be. This is an absolute game changer. And it makes sure that we know every failure is an opportunity. Let me say that again. Every failure is an opportunity. So the customer experience recovery paradox, or the customer service recovery paradox, mouthful, either way, is the theory that you could be going through a customer experience very neutrally, and you might come out of the end of it feeling meh. You know, not dissatisfied, not particularly satisfied. It was just a fine, potentially immemorable experience. If you go through this experience and there's a dip in the customer experience that leads to something disappointing, frustration, anger, upset, whatever that may be, and you leave that experience there, then of course you're not going to be a happy customer. Frustrated, unhappy, disappointed, again, whatever they may be feeling. And you may be likely to leave negative feedback, say something negative online, or become a detractor. However, this is where the genius comes in. If you go through that experience, that negative experience happens, but then the company recovers the experience, you actually end up leaving that experience a more happy, satisfied customer than if it had been a neutral experience. So the negative experience actually creates a better experience. Now, this doesn't happen by accident. You need to be set up and primed to recover that experience well. And maybe we'll do a whole other episode on the customer experience recovery paradox. But in essence, there are a few things you have to do to recover experience well. You need to act timely. It needs to be a quick response. You need to act with sincerity and transparency. Try and be open about what happened. And there needs to be an appropriate level of either apology, understanding, or maybe even compensation. But yeah, you can turn a bad customer experience into a great customer experience, which is just fantastic because things always go wrong in business, right? Policy fails us, process fails us, people fail us, technology fails us. Heck, the world we live in fails us, COVID and everything else that's going on right now. So it's good to know that when things fail, it is not the be all and end all. And as long as you are well versed in being able to recover the experience, then you'll have a happy customer, a promoter, heck. And well, if this isn't a perfect example of the customer experience recovery paradox, I do not know what is. Actually, talking about the customer experience recovery paradox, my very first formal customer experience role, where I was the head of customer experience for, wait for it, a debt collection company. Yes, the world of debt collection needs customer experience. It was a fantastic role, but I actually ran a whole program dedicated to customer experience recovery because obviously in the world of finance where money is so emotionally connotative, customer experience recovery is crucial when something goes wrong. And I was actually known as the ICE Queen, which stood for Impacting Customer Events. And do you know what? It was a fantastic program because it mobilized the whole senior leadership team to come together when something impacted the customer and agree collectively and super quickly what is the right thing to do here for the customer. Fantastic thing to do to bring a wide and big organization together to think customer first. Then there's the point of personality over process, which is a hugely important conversation right now because we are working in an age where technology and AI is just increasing rapidly and taking over human interaction touch points. There is a thought that actually a lot of the personality that brands show may well be diluted with the increasing use of AI agents, virtual agents, chatbots. And let me put this question to you. Could a virtual agent have responded in the same way as Mr. Tesco complaint handler? As now, I said the date was important on this. This was from 2008. Of course, I don't remember the email verbatim, but I remember the experience pretty darn well. And this proves peak end rule perfectly. So I talk about this a lot on social media and certainly in my consultancy. And it's the psychology and neuroscience of how we remember experiences. It comes from Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman, no less, and his work into the understanding of experiences, not just customer experience. And in a nutshell, it tells us that the intense moments of an interaction, the end of the interaction, are the thing that we recall most easily. And the intense moment of an interaction is the emotional part of the interaction. So how it makes us feel. And in this case, I'm surprised, I was happy, and wow, do I remember that? Do I remember the discount that he gave me? Not until I read the email, no. Do I remember the double discount that he gave me? Not until I read the email, no. What does that tell you? It's not about throwing compensation at customers. It's not about discounts. It's not about refunds. I spoke about this in last week's episode. Whilst there is always a time and a place for those are not what the customer will remember in the long run. It's the experience around it. And actually, when my agency does a lot of the frontline training to agents, especially handling complaints or difficult situations, it is always the training top line that compensation, refunds, discounts are not the go-to. It is how you communicate, how you understand, how you show you understand to the customer. They're the things that really change a customer experience for the better, and they are the things that customers will remember in the long run, not the discounts, freebies, or giveaways. And look, the biggest takeaway here is that they turned an unhappy, frustrated, actively complaining customer into an active promoter. Do I still use Tesco's 8 years later? You bet your bottom dollar I do. Every single week I use them. And you know what? Yes, they still mess up occasionally with substitutions, but certainly never to the level where I've been particularly disappointed, frustrated, or complained. And in fact, if there is the occasional thing that has gone wrong, usually a quick message to customer service gets it fixed pretty quickly. So let's wrap up and talk about the key business takeaways, things that we can all take away from this experience. First of all, definitely personality over process. Staff who are trained and empowered to inject their own personality, not just deliver a better customer experience, but have a better employee experience too. This guy wasn't just empowered to use his personality either. He was empowered to respond rather than just reply. And that is crucial. It isn't just a matter of sending out a templated, bog standard response, which, do you know what, might have resulted in a satisfying experience, but it certainly wouldn't have resulted in a good experience. Humour and personality are also seriously underrated retention tools. Customers more and more these days want to connect with brands, and they'll do that by feeling that a brand is trusted, that they care to do the right thing for the customer, that they act with sincerity and authenticity. And if you can show through your frontline, through your people, your personality, the way you develop your culture internally, the way you train your staff, the way you treat your staff, if that comes through and you can build a positive relationship with your customer, then you are going to go some way in standing above competitors in highly competitive industries, and you're going to go some way in creating loyalty. And finally, talk about return on investment. Unhappy customer, complaining customer, potentially lost customer, saved by one email. So, as ever, I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have been happy with this response? Did you like the Fresh Prince popping up there? Or would it have irked you? What about what's going on internally at Tesco? I mean, this was 8 years ago, of course, but do we think that this was just a renegade doing his own thing willy-nilly, or do we think this is a result of culture, training, support, and just the right way of doing customer experience? Let me know your thoughts. Pop them in comments on social. Feel free to give me a follow on LinkedIn or Instagram. All the links will be in the show notes. And as always, happy CXing.